As I said, we're up to chapter 13, and just to keep us on track and to remind us how we got here, last week we looked at chapter 12, and you got to keep in mind that we are about halfway through the tribulation period, and we said once we got to these past couple of chapters that what is happening here is that there's sort of a pause in the timeline, and John is taking some time to build context so we have a better understanding of what has been taking place. And some of that, as we've seen already, has gone all the way back to the beginning of time to explain how Satan and his angels, the demons, are cast out of heaven to the earth, and they sort of have dominion over the earth. So at this point, we've had the seven seals that of judgment that have been opened. We've had the seven trumpets of judgment that have been blown, and now we're kind of in that place where we're getting more context to have a better feel for what's going on. And in chapter 12, if you had to give it a title, that's sort of an explanation of God's plan of redemption. You remember we had this woman clothed with the sun, standing on the moon. She has 12 stars in her crown, and we said that is a representation not of a person per se, but of a nation, the nation of Israel. And this woman is pregnant, and she is going to give birth to the Messiah, whom we know is Jesus. Can you remove that from the screen? Thank you. And that Messiah comes out of the nation of Israel, and there was also this thing, the dragon, the big red dragon who was there, and we've identified that that's Satan, and Satan concludes that he needs to destroy the Messiah, but when he's unsuccessful, he turns his sights on the Messiah's people, the church, and so he, from that point forward in history, is doing all that he can to mess up God's plan of redemption. Now we get to chapter 13, and we're going to get more explanation about the opposition to God's redemptive plan. So this is going to focus on two primary characters. One is the beast that rises out of the sea, and the other is the beast that rises from the earth. And so we're going to kind of look at that and see how they play into this whole tribulation period. So I'm going to begin in verse 1 and go through 10, and then we'll look at that section, and then before we go on to the next one. And so it starts off in chapter 13, the dragon, or Satan, stood on the shore of the sea. And so keep in mind, John is seeing this in a vision. Satan is on the sea, he's looking out across the ocean. John says, I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear. And the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like a lion. And the dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and his great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast, and they asked, who is like this beast? Who can wage war against it? The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise its authority for 42 months. Remember, 42 months is the second half. It's 3.5 years. We're talking about the second half of the tribulation period. Verse 6, it opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world, speaking of Jesus. Whoever has ears, let them hear. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. All right, so we're halfway through the tribulation period, and despite how bad things went in the first half, things are about to ramp up, and they're going to become even more serious. And the reason for this is that Satan is running out of time. He knows that he's running out of time, and so he has to seize the moment and pull as many people away from God as he possibly can. Now, Satan or the dragon is on the shore. He's looking out and he sees a beast that is rising up out of the sea. And for ancient people, the sea was descriptive of things that were evil. The sea was this thing where mysterious things happened below the surface, and you didn't know what was down there. But a lot of times, bad things happen in the sea, and so it's just symbolic that this thing, this creature, this beast that is coming up out of the sea, is clothed with this evilness and this mystery that surrounds him. And if you were to go back to chapter 7 of Daniel, you'll see the similar language talking about this very beast. And just like in chapter 12, where we see the dragon, this beast has 10 horns and 7 heads, and he's showing that this beast is sort of cut from the same cloth as Satan. And so the beast that comes up out of the sea is the Antichrist, Antichrist with a capital A. Throughout the Bible, you'll see that people use terminology about the Antichrist, meaning the Antichrist, the specific person, the political leader. But John, for example, in his letters, his epistles, he talks about the Antichrist with a little a. Antichrist with a little a would be people like Hitler and people like Mussolini and people who throughout history have clearly been influenced by demonic things and are evil people, but they are not the Antichrist that is ultimately going to come in the end times and be the political leader of the world. And so we see this political figure that's going to rise up. He's going to be used by Satan to control the world. Now, he has this supreme authority. He is the one who is controlling. And when we get into later chapters, we're going to talk about how all these people come into or abdicate their thrones, their authority, and turn it over to this one person who's going to be this world leader. As powerful as he is really just a puppet of Satan. Satan is sort of sitting on the sidelines in the background, kind of orchestrating everything, but he's using this person who is referred to as the beast or the Antichrist. He's controlling what that person does. And so a lot of people speculate about who this person is going to be. We don't know for sure, but clearly it's going to be somebody who's very charismatic, somebody who has extraordinary ability to create alliances and to persuade people to follow him. And so we said previously that here we are in this midway point, and things are going to become more intense. And we said that this Antichrist, this person, in the first half of the tribulation, has sort of been embraced by Jews and others. And people think that he is God. He then is going to go into the temple, and he's going to ultimately proclaim that he's God, and he's going to begin to blaspheme God, and that is going to cause the Jews and Christians to realize that this is not God. He's not the Messiah. And so they're going to flee in order to protect themselves. And we talked about how the Jews oftentimes would go out into the desert, and the desert is sort of symbolic of God's provision and protection. Well, now all bets are off. He's identified who he is. Everybody knows that this is the Antichrist, and persecution is going to ramp up considerably. People are going to die. Christians are going to die. Now, depending on your position, If you were a pre-trib person, you didn't go through the first 3.5 years. You were raptured out. If you're a mid-trib person, this is the place where you get out. If you're a post-trib person, you're going to go through the next 3.5 years of chaos. As I've said before, it doesn't really matter which position you take. You can still be a Christian and hold to any one of these. This is the point where we had mentioned when he goes into the temple, we have this thing called the abomination of desolation. Jesus talks about this in Matthew 24, that when you see this happen, when you see this person who rises up, this political leader who's going to claim himself to be God, that's when things are going to become more intense. Now, if I didn't say it, Revelation, nowhere in Revelation does it use the term Antichrist. It uses the term beast, and it uses a couple of other terms. I think it's 28 times the Antichrist is referred to the beast. But John does, in a couple of his other letters, refer to this beast or to the person as the Antichrist. There is a view out there called the preterist view. I do not subscribe to it, but a lot of people do. The preterist view is a view of Revelation as though all of it is historical and has already happened in the past. The only thing they believe is that hasn't happened is the coming back of Christ. Typically, people who take the preterist view believe that the Antichrist was Nero in Rome. And so there have been variations on this, and I'm sure you've probably heard about people talking about these things over the years, where a lot of people have labeled throughout history different people as the Antichrist. For the early Christians, it was Nero in Rome. During the Holocaust in the 30s, people thought it was Hitler. Some people thought it was Stalin. Some people thought it was Mussolini. There's all kinds of ideas. The problem is every time somebody identifies that person as the Antichrist, we realize as time passes that wasn't the person. And so these are antichrists with a little a, people who are evil, who Satan has been using throughout history to persecute people and to move us towards ultimately this the real Antichrist. It says in verse 9, whoever has ears, let them hear. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. And this calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. And so no matter what position you take, there will be Christians who are going through this second half of the tribulation. Now, if you're a person who believes that the church is raptured before all this happens, you have to contend with the fact that at the very least, we know that there's going to be 144,000 who are going to be evangelizing the world. And so there are going to be people who come to know Jesus as Lord and Savior during this time. And again, that's one of the reasons I lean towards a post-tribulation period. So at this point, we have the dragon, who is Satan. We have the beast that rises out of the sea, who is the Antichrist. And now we're going to have another character here in a minute, the beast that is going to come from the earth. And so this Antichrist that comes out of the sea is a political figure that's going to be used by Satan to control the world. He becomes the supreme authority, and he's distinguished by his horns and his crowns. He's a puppet of Satan who is orchestrating things behind the scenes. And so now we're going to see this next person who is the beast that comes out of the earth. Let me find it here. Hmm? Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all authority of the first beast on its behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. And so the famous number that everybody is always so excited about. Notice that it says that this beast of the sea has a fatal wound. And so you need to understand what that fatal wound is. In Zechariah chapter 11, verses 15 to 17, we get a little insight. So what is believed to be going on here is that the Antichrist, at some point, there is an assassination attempt on his life. And it takes his life, but he's miraculously raised from the dead. And so now, when John sees him, he sees him and he has these visible scars. He's got a withered arm and he's got an eye that is taken out. This is what it says in Zechariah chapter 11, 15 to 17. It said, "And the Lord said to me, next, take for yourself the implements of a foolish shepherd. For indeed, I will raise up a shepherd in the land who will not care for those who are cut off, nor seek the young, nor heal those that are broken, nor feed those that still stand. But he will eat the flesh of the fat and tear their hooves in pieces. Woe to the worthless shepherd who leaves the flock. A sword shall be against him, against his arm, and against his right eye. His arm shall completely wither, and his right eye shall be totally blinded." And so there are people who believe that at some point, we don't know how this injury took place. They obviously didn't have guns when Zechariah was prophesying, but it's possible that his right eye has an injury, some sort of brain injury, traumatic brain injury. It affects his arm. The arm atrophies and he can't use it. And this was a fatal wound, caused him to die, and yet he's raised from the dead. Now, somehow, this second beast, the beast that comes from the earth, has a role to play in that. The Antichrist is the political leader. The beast that comes from the earth is a prophet. He's a religious leader. And so at the same time you're getting one world order with the political leader, you're getting one world religion that is being led by this false prophet. It is believed that this false prophet may have been the one who Satan uses to raise this political leader, the Antichrist, from the dead. But at the very least, what we see is it's this false prophet's job to keep pushing people towards worshiping the Antichrist. And you can imagine, remember in the first 3.5 years, we had God's two witnesses. We had Elijah and Moses who were proclaiming the gospel, and then they're killed. And they're left in the streets for 3 days, and this is seen worldwide, and then they're raised from the dead. It would have an extraordinary impact on people. Well, the same thing is going to happen with the Antichrist when he's assassinated and raised from the dead. People are going to look at that and see that this is a miraculous event, and they're going to follow him. But it's important to remember that not everything that is miraculous and sensational comes from God. Satan has extraordinary powers, and he can do these kinds of things as well. So you have to test these things. And so it says that that this beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise its authority for 42 months. So for the next 3.5 years, all the efforts are going towards this Antichrist, the prophet, and the political leader working together, forcing people to worship him and ultimately to worship Satan. When you look at this beast that comes out of the earth, unlike the Antichrist, the beast that comes out of the sea, he has 2 horns. Now the 2 horns, the number 2 is symbolic of testimony. And so this beast is providing testimony of the Antichrist. Some people like to contrast and say, well, this is sort of the opposite of the Elijah and Moses that we saw in the first half of the tribulation. This is sort of the evil version of that. But nonetheless, we know now that there's going to be this religious leader as well as this political leader working together. The prophet is said to be given the power on behalf of the first beast. And so we know that he has a lot of power as a religious leader, but all the work that he's doing is on behalf of the Antichrist. And so there's also now a process of weeding people out. You have complete and utter chaos and meltdown. They're actively pursuing Christians or potential Christians. They're killing them. They're trying to get rid of as many as possible. And now there needs to be a way to distinguish between those who are following the Antichrist and those who are following Jesus. And so we have this thing called the mark of the beast. It's amazing that even non-believing people, secular people, they're familiar with this term, the mark of the beast. A lot of people have speculated about what this is. When we came out with barcodes, people said, well, this is the mark of the beast. When we had credit cards with chips, people say this is the mark of the beast. People are talking now about the forced vaccinations and somehow inserting chips into people. The fact is, we don't really know what what this is going to look like. I think probably more realistically, when you look at this type of literature, the number 6 refers to man. Man was created on the 6th day. And when you have this word, this number 666, it's sort of this confirmation that this is about mankind, that this prophet, this false prophet, as well as the Antichrist, comes out of the evilness of mankind. And so I don't think that there's any sinister plan to implant chips in us or to tattoo us like they did with, like Hitler did with the Jews. I don't think there's going to be a physical mark, but I do believe that there's going to be a way to distinguish a believer from a non-believer. Maybe that's with some sort of identification, physical identification. I don't know, but whoever doesn't have the one world government identification, they won't be able to buy things. They won't be able to sustain themselves economically. And so there's going to be this struggle to buy food and to do the things that you need to do. But again, that's okay if you're a believer, because ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to end up in heaven. And so to try and kind of summarize this, chapter 12, we have the plan of redemption. We know that the nation of Israel is going to birth the Messiah, and that Messiah is Jesus. Chapter 13, we have Satan's plan to oppose the plan of redemption. The first person that rises on the scene is the Antichrist. The Antichrist appears, he's very charismatic, he's embraced by the world. And for the first 3.5 years, he's He's although there's a lot of chaos going on, he's not really considered as being who he really is, as being a puppet of Satan. You get to the halfway point, the abomination of desolation takes place. This Antichrist sets himself up in the temple as God. The Jews recognize that this isn't really God. He's not the Messiah they thought he was. They begin to flee. And so there's this separation between believers and non-believers. The Antichrist, along with the false prophet, they begin ruling this one world order, the political side as well as the religious side. They're working together. And their goal is to eliminate every Christian and every potential Christian. However, we know that people are going to come to the Lord. People are still going to accept him. There's still going to be evangelism taking place. There's still going to be people who overcome their fears and make the choice to follow God. And so it is going to be a pretty extraordinary time. As we get a little further along, we will continue to see more context come into play about how these things are working together.